The inside of Coates.
Parker gets too heavily involved.
And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Hello everybody and welcome to AOC Gaming's League of Champions Season 2 powered by VRRC. My name's Jack Oliphant. Joining me alongside is Dave Marshall in the commentary box as per usual. You're here at Magione for the second round of the second series in the second season of the League of Champions. That's the touring car series that if we remind you, if you weren't here last time out, obviously we're at Donington, which was a fantastic spectacle of racing. Bits of drama to be catching up on, but first of all, Dave, how the devil are you?
Yeah, very, very good. I've had a nice coast walk before the stream and jumped on and cannot wait. You know, first round with the ballast on in touring cars, and I really think it's going to mess with things tonight.
Yeah, it should do indeed, and I'm feeling a lot better as well, luckily. But you can see that from Donington round 1, Dan Zelos came away of driver of the round, as well as the driver who gained the most amount of points out of the entire evening. Jordan Brennan came second, and Jack McIntyre ended up third place as well. And thanks to the fact that Dan Zelos got that driver of the day, he also got the nice big Power Max ballasting kit. We'll a bit more about that in a couple of minutes time. You can also see that he's carrying 60 kilograms of ballast on board, Dan Zelos, thanks to the fact that he is championship leader by just only 1 point ahead of Jordan Brennan in second place. Jack McIntyre is in third with Scott Bugner in fourth. Rounding out the top 5 is Andy Dorman, and you can see the rest of the drivers going down. But importantly, compared to the Ginetta series, is that we only have ballast to 6th position, Dave.
Yeah, we do. So, yeah, you know, we've only got ballast down for the top 6 positions, but also the increments of the top 6 are really quite heavy, you know, towards the top. You know, first, second and third is separated by 15 kg, but then, you know, 6th, 5th and 4th is only separated by 20. So, yeah, really quite an interesting format regarding the weight, and I think it's going to lend itself to being some absolutely fantastic racing. Obviously, Callum Newsham there in 7th, not a great outing last time out, a driver that we expect to see a lot higher up, and his pace will show that as well. So for him not to have any kilograms of ballast on going into this, I think he's definitely going to be a driver to watch.
Yeah, speaking of things to watch, why don't we have a look at you driving round at Magione on a fast lap, Dave? Let's take it away.
So out of the last corner and across the line on one of my favourite tracks into turn 1, we want to try and get nice and hard on the brakes, V the corner and get a really late apex so we can blend in that throttle and get really good drive on exit without pushing the front end too far wide. Turn 2 is quite similar but want to have a bit more of a U rather than a V, carry a little bit more apex speed. Down towards turns 3 and 4 here, want to take a lot of sausage curb. Dampers are really very good, so it absorbs that really well. Hairpins are really awkward corner, very narrow part of the track. Into turn 5, yet again being patient on that throttle, not to try and push that front end over onto the grass. Now onto the long straight, probably the best overtaking opportunity on the track, long enough to get in that slipstream. We're going to probably see some really brave moves here on the race. Into turn 6, a deceptive braking point, need to shrug more speed off than you think. You're coming into there really very fast. Long double right-hander, down into this right-hander here. There's a really aggressive bump on the inside of that curb, so don't want to take too much. And then the key through this last complex is just to get that right rhythm where you're carrying enough momentum through the corners, but not overly that you have to slow down too much for all the others. Grabbing 4th early on the last corner and across the line.
Tight, twisty and demanding by the looks of that track from Dave Marshall, and a brilliant hot lap from him. But what are we watching exactly? It's the League of Champions Season 2, powered by VRRC, of course. We had the Ginetta Super Cup for 4 rounds, a week break, and this is the second round of the touring cars. And Dave, we've got a whole host. We're not even halfway through the overall championship, are we? It's a fantastic season we've got coming up for us with the touring cars, but there's plenty more to come.
Yeah, so far, you know, we've only been in a single make, single car category, but coming up next is the GT4 Sprint Cup as well, followed by the Mini as well. So, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how the drivers adapt to different cars, and, you know, certain drivers might really come through the grid. But essentially, what is League of Champions? Well, League of Champions is made up of 4 separate championships that all go towards a final league. Them final league, you know, corresponds to prizes in their own right, but each championship is made up of a league table where first place prize gets our fantastic Sim Race 5 chassis with a GT F1 seat, second place SR3 with a GT F1 seat, and then third place our GT F1 seat with side mounts. And then 4th down to 8th place is membership packages that really helps you get racing with us and increased membership benefits. So really a huge opportunity to win a lot of stuff with us, as well as you probably saw Dan Zelos won driver of the round previous round out. It's just a driver that for us really connects with sort of what racing's about, and someone that really impresses us with the racecraft or the manner of the driving. And you know what, I don't think you can fault it, Jack. The way Dan drove last round out was faultless.
Well, the reason why we gave it to him, wasn't it? Because he was only joined the session about with 30 minutes of practice, and he ended up sticking out on podium positions left, right and centre, didn't he? So, although just Scott Bugner, to be fair, was close running, we thought, and actually now we can blend into qualifying rather smoothly by focusing on Dan Zelos himself, obviously with that amount of ballast on board, a huge amount of ballast that he has got. He's currently sat in 5th place, so still doing really rather well, but remember, if you are new to this, you're only just tuning in, then the top 6 are the only ones with ballast on board. Not the top 10, not top 12 or 15 or anything like that. Just the top 6 for this Touring Car Championship. So the fact that Dan Zelos is currently in 5th place, Scott Bugner in 6th, Jack McIntyre obviously was shooting up to the Zancho Simsport driver in 2nd place. But Callum Newsham, he had a mare of an evening at Donington Park. I think it's safe to say, isn't it, David? He wasn't happy at all with the results that he was getting. But at the moment, he's qualifying on pole position, isn't he? With only 9 minutes to go, pretty much. And he'll be hoping for a better turnaround at this little twisty circuit.
Yeah, it just seemed like every time he tried to make a bit of progress through the grid, he was just getting a little bit wide here and there on the grass, or, you know, moves would close or gaps would close, whereas other drivers just seem to be slightly luckier in position on track. It happens, doesn't it? You know, certain opportunities arrive for certain drivers easier than others, and Callum just seemed to hit a brick wall every time. So didn't score, I think, nearly as well as he would have wanted to, but as I said before, I think he's the danger man for tonight. He's got no ballast on board. He's probably thinking, I need a good points haul tonight. And look, already sitting with the pole lap at the moment. I think what we're expecting, probably just nudging into the 13s, might be good enough for Paul. You can see at the moment he's done a 14.0, which I think is an incredibly competitive time. Jack Mack, though, currently on a very fast lap indeed, gone fastest sector 1 out of anyone so far. He's sitting 3rd place in the championship, so he's got 30 kilograms of ballast on, so half of what we see Dan Zelos with. You know, that is going to make things really interesting for tonight, isn't it, Jack?
It is indeed, yeah, and we don't want to dwell on this too much, but obviously we've touched on Donington a couple of times, and a couple of people may be asking, what about Ryan Elliott, because he currently sits in 3rd place. Well, if you did catch the end of Donington race 2, there was a bit of a drama, shall we say, and driving standards rules have been put in place, so there were clerks and stewards' decision to be made, one of which was the fact that Ryan Elliott and Robbie Stapleford were disqualified from the 2nd race of Donington Park, which means Ryan Elliott is not in these sort of ballast positions, even though he scored very well throughout the evening. He's obviously got that 2nd race taken away from him, as did Robbie Stapleford. But that does mean, from Ryan's perspective, that he is lacking ballast and lacking weight on board, which means he's currently sat in 3rd place with a good opportunity to maybe go a little bit quicker as well, although he's just dived into the pits. That'll only be for a quick tyre change. He'll be back out to try and put some hot laps in throughout the rest of the session. And as we see, Jack McIntyre, he's gone fastest yet again in Sector 1, I believe. And so he's still picking up the paces, Jack Mack. And we'll see what he can provide. It's Callum Newson, who's just dipped himself into the 13s at 113.89. Jack McIntyre at 114.157. So about 2.5 tenths to make up. But if he's putting in purple times, it won't be that difficult for him, Dave.
I'm really wondering whether, I don't know whether it's just I haven't been that observant, but I haven't really noticed many drivers going into really significantly pit, whereas that seems relatively early for me. That's halfway through the session, isn't it? So, yeah, coming in to get new tyres on now, go back out and do, another 4 or 5 laps. Jack Mack, though, still lapping and showing that you can still do the Sector 1 time, even though his tyres are maybe slightly struggling. Dan Zelos here has got himself up into 4th place, only 2 tenths off what Jack Mack's done. So actually, you know, for Dan Zelos to be carrying twice the weight of Jack here, doing very, very well to find himself in the top 5.
Yeah, pretty much everybody is on an outlap at the moment as well, by the looks of it. I think Dan Zelos is currently maybe on an outlap. Here is Kenny Press, and actually this is quite notable, isn't it? Because I'm not sure if Kenny Press is one of the drivers, but since we sort of dropped down towards this sort of top 10 area, or fight to get into the top 10, Dave, it's an opportunity to talk about the VRRC Academy. Well, the Academy powered by VRRC, I should probably say. Rich Hayden will be typing away in Discord at me. It's the Academy powered by VRRC, and that hosts a whole host of drivers basically on a Monday night, doesn't it, where they get an opportunity to have a chat and lessons with you and also other driver coaches that VRRC employ, to try and get a little bit quicker. And one of the drivers, in fact, there we go, there's a graphic on your screen, so you jump in a Formula 4, Audi TT Cup, Mazda MX-5 and Caterham 420R, and very demanding cars in their own rights, but currently it's the Mazda MX-5, and I would say it's been helping. Even though we're currently driving a front-wheel drive touring car and they've been in the rear-wheel drive Mazdas, I reckon it's helping a few of these guys here tonight.
Yeah, definitely, you know, the Mazda MX-5, which, as you said, is currently what they're doing at the moment. The 3rd race in, and if you haven't seen it, I recommend you go on our Facebook or YouTube and check that out, because the racing in there has been absolutely phenomenal. And yeah, you know, you've got the likes of Andy Dorman, Nick Sutton, Luke Weston, all them drivers are entering into the academy, and we've just seen a huge leap in lap pace. You know, I know Mick Sutton's maybe sitting 10th place, Andy Dorman sitting 7th, but they are closer than they have ever been to breaking into sort of that top sort of section in the races. And I tell you what, looking at the way Mick's been on the practice boards, he's putting laps in that previously drivers would have been like, he's a front runner. So very impressive for Mick, and hopefully we can see tonight he's just going to hook that lap up and really get himself comfortably in that top 10.
Yeah, and if you are obviously interested in the Academy sort of championship, I should say, or Academy program is probably a better way of saying it, and just because it has started in the Masters doesn't mean you can't get involved, does it, Dave? And if people hit up the VRRC social channels, then they can absolutely still get involved and still take advantage of the Academy. They, as I said, it's only just started with the Masters. They haven't done the K-Tums or the TTs or anything like that yet. So they just need to hit up VRRC if they want to take part.
Yeah, exactly that. And all the tracks in each championship stay are exactly the same, so it's only the car that you have to get used to. All the cars have slightly different sort of perks. So the Mazda is all about momentum. The TT's got the push to pass, so that's a bit of strategy based, deciding when you have to do the overtake. We've got the Formula 4, which is very high aero. I mean, not compared to an F1 car, but compared to a normal hot hatch, very high aero, can be quite snappy. And then we've got the Caterham, which is probably slightly more floaty and very loose at the back end. So yeah, 4 different disciplines of car, but really it's all to try and aid these drivers in getting better car feel, really progress them as a driver and make them more competitive in more serious series.
Absolutely, yeah. So if you do want to get involved, then please do message VRRC at any of the relevant social channels or emails or websites, or basically anywhere you can find them. They're pretty much everywhere you can look on the internet. Callum Newsham has just gone purple in Sector 1. We are coming to the last 2 minutes and 30 seconds of qualifying. Jack Mack has gone green in Sector 1. I tell you what, that's mightily close. Callum Newsham with a 41.7, Jack McIntyre with a 41.7, but a 7.6. And with Jack McIntyre just going a little bit quicker in Sector 2, Ryan Elliott's put a green Sector 1 in as well. They're all within 1/10 of each other in that Sector 1, which is quite stunning. Sector 2, Jack Mack looks like he's got the advantage slightly. Having said that, no, Callum Newsham probably will have the advantage. It's too difficult to call. I think it's going to come down to the checkered flag, to be honest. But with these new tyres on the track rubbered in and getting used to the track as well, it's starting to heat up, especially between those top 3.
Indeed. I mean, currently we've got 2 drivers that's just managed to break within the 1 minute 13s, and then we've got a driver on a 1:14.0, a driver on a 1:14.1, a driver on a 1:14.3, another driver on a 1:14.3. This, I mean, I was saying one of the drivers earlier on that I really do think qualifying here could be really quite the key. This is a very tight, twisty track. There's only one significant straight really where you might get a bit of slipstream, but it's one of them tracks where it's going to be relatively easy to defend. As long as you put your car in the right place, the track isn't really wide enough to force cars, to be offline. So it's going to be really interesting to see where people are going to manage to get the moves done tonight.
Yeah, and if you're wondering what on earth the track is, well, we're at Magione, and I wouldn't blame you for not maybe hearing it before, but effectively it's a 1.5 mile configuration of a track. It was built by, I think it's 6 friends back in 1973 who owned a team called Scuderia Carpine, and effectively they just wanted a test circuit. That's all they wanted. They found a plot of land near the town called Magione, unsurprisingly, and they thought, you know what, we'll just create a track out of this. It'll be our test track. Insanely rich people, I'm sure. And obviously, apparently within the decade, it bankrupted them, and it was sold to a few people throughout the years. But it has turned out to what we basically see in the virtual world at the moment. It has hosted a couple of major championships, the Italian touring cars, I think you were saying. I think the European V8s are currently racing there. It's had Formula 3 for many years as well. So yeah, it's not one of the biggest tracks in Italy. It's not going to be troubling Monza for a Formula 1 slot, shall we say, but it is quite an entertaining little track by the looks of it, and hopefully it'll provide us with fantastic racing for these touring cars. And speaking of touring cars, Dave, well, the members, obviously, for VRRC, there's a competition going around, basically. There's an opportunity to win 2 tickets towards Brands Hatch, I believe it is, this weekend, if you're a member of the VRRC. So 2 free tickets, all courtesy, I think, of PMR and VRRC. I could be slightly wrong. I'm sure I'll be corrected in the chat in a second if I am wrong, but still, an opportunity to get to see some real-life touring car action is never something to be sniffed at.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as long as you're a member of VRRC and you're getting involved, having them comments, it's actually any round that we've got the VRRC team truck at. We've teamed up with Power Max for the British touring car, and we're basically, taking our sim truck along and allowing people to go in and have a go of the simulators that we provide. But yeah, as you said, we're in a lucky enough position that we're giving away 2 tickets for every round we're at, including a paddock pass and a garage tour through Palmax Racing. So yeah, huge thanks to them, and really something quite nice to give back to our members that take part.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm lucky enough to go to most of the touring car real-life BTCC events through BMW, and it is a fantastic day out, so hopefully people get involved in that. Callum Newsom's still sitting on pole position, but more importantly, everybody behind him has taken the checkered flag now, and there has been no major changes by the looks of it. So Jack McIntyre has qualified in 2nd place, Ryan Elliott in 3rd place, Scott Bugner in 4th, Jordan Brennan was in 5th. Dan Zelos actually dropped down to 6th in the end, so Bugner and Brennan got some pace behind them. To be honest, that's that's probably where we would slightly expect Dan Zelos to be, isn't it, in 6th place? And Dave, you'll be very pleased with that one, to be honest, silently pleased, because that means your ballast is working well. It has reversed the top 6, essentially.
I always try and make the ballast worth, around half a second. Callum Newsom doesn't have any weight on, and Dan Zelos has full ballast on. What's he done? A 1:14.3, and Callum Newsom's done a 1:13.8. So there's your 5:10. So yeah, I am happy. It's really messed things up a little bit, and I think drivers are going to be thinking, how's this going to affect my tyres? It's not making the championship as easy as just going out and putting it on pole every single weekend.
No, and you have to turn up every single evening as well, really, don't you, to actually be in with a shout of winning the prizes, of which there are a plethora of, and they're fantastic prizes to boot as well. Not only the membership, but the top 3 obviously winning those sort of sim rigs that they can crack on with. Anyway, we can have a chat, I believe. Is he in the chat with us with our pole position man, Callum Newsom? Let's just have a quick look.
Yeah, I'm going to just get him in here now. So I believe we've got Callum Newsom in the interview room. Callum, quite a convincing pole lap there. You managed to get the lap in relatively early. I take it, is it a track that's is clicking with you? Obviously, it's a very, very technical track here.
Yeah, well, I struggled last time at Donington, so I thought I need to do some practice for this one. And yeah, I'm just clicking with that. It's just quite technical, so I'm quite good with the technical stuff. So yeah, I'm glad to be on pole. First pole racing, I think, as well.
Yeah, I mean, I did comment on this at Donington, but the way the car's set up is it's very safe. It's not as lively as what you'd expect. The minis that you race in real life for, previous esports championships that we've done in the mini JCW ourselves. It's quite neutral, so I take it's probably quite hard to actually get the car to have a bit of rotation. Do you think the drivers that's got a little bit of weight on board are maybe struggling with that, and that's what's giving you maybe that little bit of an advantage on the road?
I don't know, actually. Yeah, but these cars they're understeer like really badly. So I think if you put the brake bias back a bit, you can sort out a little bit. But I'm quite surprised how quick the guys with weight on were, to be honest, around here. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and last question, regarding the track, I take it regarding defending, you're thinking it's probably not going to be one of the hardest tracks to defend on. It's only that back straight. I take it, do you think if someone puts up the inside there, that's the place to do it?
Yeah, probably. Maybe the first corner as well, but like you say, it's going to be quite easy to defend. Well, I hope so anyway.
Well, unfortunately, I have just seen that Jack McIntyre's disconnect from the server, so it might be a front row without Jack, so I'm sure you'll be wanting the slightly easier option there, but hopefully we can get him back in. But congrats for putting it on pole there, Callum, and look forward to seeing what you can do in race 1.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
And that was a quick chat with Callum Newsom, our pole sitter, but we're going to have a quick look at our advert from one of our partners, AOC Gaming, so we'll be back in a couple of minutes. We're just, I think, just under 1 minute away from the start of our first race this evening. 20 minutes for the first race of the evening, 20-minute reverse grid for the second race. And as I say that, what perfect timing, because the lights have just come up on our screen and you'll hopefully see them turn red. And as the lights do turn red, the revs will rise and we will be racing for the first time here on a Tuesday evening in the League of Champions, powered by VRRC. And it's a good getaway by Callum Newsham. Jack McIntyre not being able to get up the inside of him, but Ryan Elliott's looking around the outside of him. Jack McIntyre was mentioned he may be disconnected from the survey. He was. He's reconnected as Ryan Elliott slots back into third place. Callum Newsham getting away, but look at this, a huge lunge up the inside by Elliott on McIntyre through the left-hand. There's plenty of chicanes and there's plenty of tight braking zones for people to try and get alongside. Elliott's going to have the inside of the next corner as well as McIntyre look to try and get past, but not to be. Scott Bugner in fourth place. He's still in fourth place, but he's just turned around second place starting man. Jack McIntyre, who's just got back going. But look at this, it's touring car action already, Dave. They're getting their elbows out.
Yeah, I think that was just a bit of a chain reaction there. I think it was one driver had a little nibble and it was just a chain reaction that pushed on. But what it has done is it's meant Jordan Brennan is sitting alongside Jack Mack. And look at Dan Zelos. He's trying to wait whether there's going to be a little move to be had up the inside. Jordan Brennan there doing very well not to push it wide into the side of Jack Mack. Will he keep the inside line? That's very brave by Jack Mack there to be as late on the brakes. This is side by side through the twisty section of track. But Jordan Brennan's managed to get round the outside. Brilliant move there. And Dan Zelos is looking at this going, I want a bit of this, but there's just not room to put my car.
I think, yeah, Dan Zelos will be cursing the fact that he didn't try and take advantage of that a little bit more robustly, but there is nothing he could do. It would have been a turning someone round incident as he almost comes into the side of McIntyre, who feels like he's probably getting a little bit beaten up out there at the moment. Zelos comes off the power to let him back through. I think that was nice. Probably sportsmanship at its finest, I would say. I think Zelos knew he'd done wrong. As a little bit bashing in the background is Max Edmondson, and I think on Andy Dorman as Luke Weston gets past Tempera. So maybe it was actually Tempera who lost out on that one. Unfortunately, I did just miss who was involved in that, apart from I knew it was Edmondson going on through. So as we just take a quick breath, it is Callum Newsham leading by just over a second ahead of Ryan Elliott. Scott Bugner has moved himself up to third place thanks to the fact that Jack McIntyre has gone backwards by one. Jordan Brennan's moved up to fourth place. McIntyre's obviously in fifth, and then Dan Zelos is still stuck in sixth position. Maybe carrying that weight in the race will hurt him a little bit more than it did in qualifying, but still going to be a solid performance by him if he carries on where he is. Max Edmondson up to eighth, then just behind Andy Dorman, but looking racy.
Yeah, indeed. And I'll tell you another driver that's really impressed me from the start. Paul Laramie's got himself nearly into the top 10, tucked in just behind Paulo Tempera. So definitely a driver who's impressed me at the moment. He's getting a little bit of pressure here from Andy Carroll behind. This is going to be interesting going down to turn one. But a huge move by Max Edmondson up the inside of Andy Dorman there. Almost like Andy Dorman just left the door open there just to allow himself to tuck back in. Maybe he thought battling there was going to cost him too much time to Luke Weston, who's looking very racy as well. So yeah, keep an eye on Paul Laramie for making his way back through this grid. We've got the Jack Mack and Dan Zelos battle as well. That seems to be sort of brewing. But I do think this Callum Newsham, Ryan Elliott and Scott Bugner, the lack of weight in the cars does really seem to have just turned the tyres on a little bit quicker, and they're managing to use that in fresher tyres just to help pull away.
Yeah, I think Andy was using his Dorman name a little bit too literally there, wasn't he? Opening up too politely into the first corner for Max Edmondson, who is obviously driving very well. Here's Andy Carroll against Paul Laramie. Obviously, you just mentioned him before. Oh, Carroll squeezing his way. His nose up the outside there, but it's always going to be ambitious to try and carry momentum around a double apex right-hander. Not only that, obviously the next corner is a sharp right-hander as well. So, yeah, it's always going to be ambitious. Luckily, no one came off worse. But again, we say it time and time again, it's not just the front lot that provide fantastic racing. It's all the way down the order as well. And that's the brilliant thing about the League of Champions and the fact that it's such high-quality driving throughout the field as well. And to be honest, remember, we're always looking for that driver of the day. So if we're watching something, or you've seen something in a personal live stream, or you're just here to support someone, then do let us know who your vote for driver of the day is as well in the chat, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, or wherever we're live. Basically, it's put it in the comments. Hopefully we'll see it. We're scouring the comments throughout the evening, and we'll sort of decide on what we think is driver of the day from those comments. We'll take them into account, so please do get involved and share, like, and do put the comments in the chat. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, just seeing here, it's exactly the sort of thing that I like to see. Paul Laramie just putting his car exactly where he needs to put it. That Andy Carroll can't get the run, you know. Yes, he's not maybe setting the timing boards alight regarding the fastest laps, but he's doing exactly what he needs to do just to hold that position at the moment. Hopefully I don't do a commentator's curse, but he is driving very, very well, and at the moment a nice clean car as well, which is nice to see. Little lock up there maybe into the right-hander, but nice bit of composure there just to keep it all together. I think he's going to have his work cut out to keep Andy Carroll behind him for the entire rest of the race.
Yeah, but I mean,
look at the gap,
possible,
actually,
isn't it? Yeah, I was going to say the gap that Laramie's just pulled on Carroll, but look at Kenny Press behind all of a sudden. He's looking a lot more racy, and he's probably more of a threat to Carroll than Carroll is to Laramie at this moment in time, taking a late apex. And we'd like to thank everybody as well for tuning in to VRRC and the League of Champions rather than watching that namby-pamby football rubbish on the other side. So please do keep it pinned, even though kickoff may be only 5 minutes away. We're very pleased to have this fantastic racing in front of you and provided by obviously these awesome drivers up and down the field. Speaking of awesome drivers up and down the field, we now move to the front of the field. Jack McIntyre with the view of Jordan Brennan, but not only Brennan, Scott Bugner and I'd say Ryan Elliott's car pretty close in distance. I think Callum Newsham is a full second ahead, but apart from that, everybody is really rather tight.
Yeah, they are indeed, and I think this is probably which the tyres on a little bit quicker, could use the momentum off the start. It's one of them things where if a car's slow out of a corner, especially if you've got the weight on, like Jack Mac or Dan Zelos, actually saying that Jordan Brennan sat there with 45 kg on, so he's doing very well to be in front of Jack here. All it takes is them cars to lose a bit of that momentum coming out the corner, and they just don't pick up as well as them cars that don't have the weight. And I think that's played right into Scott Bugner's hands off the line. He's found a few gaps in the traffic, he's got on the power, and it's managed to have the pace just to keep ahead. Like there, look, just slightly slower into that corner than Jordan there, but because of the difference in the power, Jordan can't pull alongside him to get the move done.
Yeah, exactly. I did say before actually that Ryan Elliott was in this fight as well. That's absolute false nonsense. He's nowhere near it. It's a 3-second gap between Ryan Elliott and Scott Bugner actually. Sorry, it was just a little bit phasey on my feed, unfortunately, but that doesn't take away from the fantastic action that we got going here. Jordan Brennan, his rear view mirror is exactly the same as what we're seeing at the moment. His rear view mirror at the top of your screen, absolutely filled to the brim with Zancho Simsport at the moment, as Jack McIntyre is really piling the pressure on, but to be fair, it's keeping it clean at the moment. And I have to say, McIntyre probably was a little bit beaten up on that first round as Bugner gets a little bit loose on the exit of that corner, but quickly into the right-left chicane onto the final corner. He's having to clean it all back up again as Brennan's now got a gap between himself and Bugner yet again. But as I said, I mean, you're a driver coach, Dave. I was always taught never race in your mirrors, never drive in your mirrors. You will miss a braking zone. That's exactly what Valtteri Bottas did at the weekend in the F1 when Max Verstappen was coming up against him. He looked at his mirrors, and all of a sudden you pass the braking zone, you open the door far too wide. But it is so hard to do, isn't it? Even the Formula 1 drivers can get it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy to say in practice, and unfortunately, look at this. Andy Carroll's got through past Paul Laramie. I believe that happened in the last complex. It just seemed like Andy Carroll managed to get the last corner a little bit better and got the run down to turn one. So that's an interesting battle. Let's see if they can try and gap Kenny Press, who, you know, was looking very, very racy earlier on in this race. With Andy Carroll running a little bit wide there, you can see Paul Laramie actually getting a quite a good run down this straight, just with Andy Carroll going wide. But yeah, regarding looking in your mirrors, it's very easy to say in practice, don't look in them, keep looking forward. You know, the car's a second and a half behind, he's not going to go for that lunge. I mean, not that there's a second and a half separating these cars, look at this, it's nearly nose to tail. But yeah, it's one of them things, it is very, very hard to get yourself not to feel the pressure. Even if you just see the car moving around in your mirror, you're not looking at it, but you can see he's there. All them things just makes you really doubt where you're putting the car, but it takes some real serious focus to go, right, no, I'm going to drive a defensive line, not look in my mirror, and until he's there, then not react.
Yeah, it's quite funny, really. I remember my first ever car race was at Rockingham in a Ginetta G40. First, as I said, first ever car race. First race in motorsport for about 6 years. and I was in the lead. I got from 4th to 1st, and I led it for 10 out of the 12-minute race or something like that. And I was so focused at someone behind me who was a little bit quicker than me. And I remember my brother saying, "Don't race in your mirrors. Don't look in your mirrors. Don't look in your mirrors." But I was like, right, okay, I'll focus on that. Don't look in my mirrors. Don't look in my mirrors. And I was focusing so much on not looking in my mirrors and thinking I can't look in my mirrors. I actually span it out the last corner and ended up 3rd. So the fact that if I'd just forgotten it all and just raced as I raced, that would probably be a more effective way of doing it. But I was so focused, as Jack McIntyre is focusing on the driver ahead of him. Luckily, I think Brennan just probably saw that and didn't turn in too late and carry that momentum. So there we go. Brennan doing exactly what you should do and probably race a little bit in your mirrors, but not obviously overcomplicating it. Callum Newsom's got Ryan Elliott for company. Now this is the battle for the lack of ballast drivers, really, isn't it? Because everybody behind these guys have got ballast on for the next 3 places. But these guys really pulling ahead now. But that doesn't. I thought Callum Newsom had a good full second, but by the looks of it, Ryan Elliott has pulled right up for this gap.
Yeah, so I don't know what happened on the previous lap, but Callum Newsom lost a chunk of time there on the last lap, and that's allowed Ryan Elliott to get right on the back of him here. This is going to be an interesting battle. This is where we might see a bit of slipstream playing a part here. Ryan Elliott right in behind Callum. We're going to get up towards 6th gear here, going towards the right-hander at the back of this straight, and you'll see the gap is just going to close up just in the braking area. Oh, there's Ryan braking very, very late, but just enough. You can see he's probably closed the gap there, maybe 2 car lengths on what he was at the start of the race. Callum Newsom going a little bit deep on the brakes there. You can see locking up that back right wheel. He's going to have to just reel that in a little bit to keep his momentum. But Ryan Elliott, look, maybe struggling to see that apex with Callum Newsom's car taking up the majority of his view. That's the other thing, Jack. You know, that last section there, you've got to spot 4 very slow apexes. If you're slightly offline, you lose a heck of a lot of time. But the majority of the time, there's a car that close, you can't even see them.
I don't know if it's because we're obviously riding on board and we can't quite see the tyres of Ryan Elliott, but Callum Newsom's kicking him a lot of puffs of smoke, isn't he? I don't know if Ryan Elliott is maybe struggling quite the same with the brakes, but it's quite interesting to see Callum Newsom really struggling. In fact, there we go. Yeah, Ryan Elliott does puff the brakes a little bit. Is that a factor that we're sort of sometimes read too much into? Because sometimes we look at locking the brakes, don't we? But it could be the fact that they're just leaning on 3 wheels, and the rear right, if they're going through a right-hander, sort of starts to cock itself a little bit and ends up sort of locking, and there's a little bit of dust thrown in the air.
Yeah, so that's exactly what it is. You know, all these cars are front-wheel drive. All of them, if you watch the replay and get the camera nice and low, all the cars are cocking the inside wheel around the corner, you know, because the back of the car is that stiff and the front's that little bit soft. It pitches the weight onto the opposite front corner that they're turning. So you can see Paolo will turn in here, load the front left up, but as he loads the front left up, it's going to lift that back right wheel up in the air. Yeah, the reason I think probably why we're seeing Callum lock up the rear so much, I don't know whether you heard it in the interview, but I said about the car being stable, and he said he was trying to push the brake bias back as far as he could. Now, if he's pushing the brake bias back, that's what's going to lock his rear wheels more, because there's more pressure going back there. Whether that's sacrificing a little bit of his braking potential, or whether that lock is actually helping rotate his car.
Yeah, it's all those sort of mind games as well, isn't it? Because maybe Ryan Elliott's looking at that, seeing a lot of puffs of smoke, maybe. As we're actually watching Tampere, it's actually a fantastic view of exactly what we're talking about, isn't it? Because it's 4 cars all in a row, and they're all producing the same puffs of smoke, and it's not really aiding or hindering any of them. I think Tampere has actually locked up a little bit too much, maybe locked up the front brakes a little bit. But you're right, if he's playing with that brake bias, it's not fixed setup, I don't think. Is it, Dave? Correct me if I'm wrong.
It's semi-fixed.
That was it.
Yeah, so they can't change cambers, they can't change the wing, they can't change the toe. The only things that can change is anything you would be able to change inside the cockpit in a real car. So anything like traction control, ABS, brake power and brake bias. You can change tyre pressures, but other than that, it's a completely fixed setup. So that's the other thing where, you know, if you didn't feel like you'd be necessarily competitive jumping into a championship like this, you've got to remember it's the same for everyone. They've got a fixed setup. As Jack Mack looks for a lunge up the inside of Jordan, John's maybe gone a little bit deep on the brakes trying to defend that, but good job getting the cut back there. Jack Mack's starting to look quite racy here as the race gets on. He's looking for ways past, and all this is going to take is Jordan and Jack to start battling, and look who's behind them, current championship leader Dan Zelos.
Yeah, I'm sure Dan Zelos probably won't be too displeased, shall I say, about finishing where he is at the moment in 6th place, because to be honest, he knows it's a long championship, isn't it? He's clearly got some good pace. He didn't do that much practice at Donington. He came out with some fantastic results, and a 6th place in race 1 here is a good solid point earner as well. But Jordan Brennan is only 1 point behind him in the championship. So the fact that obviously Brennan is finishing 2 places higher at the moment, it's completely provisional with 5 minutes and 15 seconds to go, will mean that Jordan Brennan maybe gets ahead of him in the points just by a few. But again, it's a long championship. We're just watching the 3rd race of I'm very poor at maths, of 8. The 3rd race of 8 races in this touring car season. There we go. I thought we were going into double figures. I was going mad. But so it's quite a few rounds to go, and Zelos won't be. He wouldn't have been expecting to lead the championship going into Donington, so I'm sure he won't be too disheartened by losing maybe only by 1 or 2 points so that going out of this round.
I mean, he's in a position where he'll be probably starting to try and calculate, because it's a short season. There's only 8 races, you said, which is 4 race meetings. It starts to play in your mind, like, do you want to go into the last round with the full weight on board, or do you use a bit of tactics so that you're maybe close enough in points, but you've got a car that's maybe 2/10 a lap faster with slightly less weight? That might be starting to come into it. This is getting nearly at the midway through the season. So, yeah, it's going to be very difficult. But with it being such a short season, do you just chance it and just go all out and go for it as hard as you can?
Yeah, actually, it's one of the shortest seasons I actually commentate on. I'm so used to saying it's a long season, but I'm absolutely incorrect, because we have 4 mini-series, basically, summing up this entire championship. Andy Dorman's got past Max Edmondson. We've been flitting to and from all the little battles, but look at this, a huge lunge around the outside by Kenny Press and Paul Laramie. Andy Carroll has got past Paul Laramie. We sort of mentioned and featured this race a little bit early on, probably about 15 minutes ago now at the opening stages of this race. Well, Andy, you said at the time, Dave, that Paul Laramie would be doing a good job to keep Andy Carroll behind him. Well, he hasn't managed to do such a thing. And I think there's about a 5-second gap between them now, and you can see Kenny Press is keen to add to the dismay of Paul Laramie at the moment.
No, but I tell you what this does show. This shows how fast the drivers behind Paul has been. And look at how long he's keeping them behind them. So, yes, for all his pace isn't there on lap times, the way he's driving and the way he's defending, for me, is exactly what we like to see. This is a real masterclass of how to keep a driver behind you.
Well, we quite often speculate maybe, or nominate some drivers of the days that we sort of have in our back of our minds coming from a race 1 and going obviously into race 2. We keep an eye on them. Who would be your sort of standout performance from race 1? I'm just giving you a minute or two to try and think of some names. Obviously, it's been quite an exciting race so far, but it's also been very measured from a whole host of drivers. So who are the sort of some names that maybe you're going to be keeping an eye out for race 2?
Well, obviously Callum has to be up there. He's drove a great race so far. Scott Bugner's got to be up there. He's got himself up to 3rd place. It's a very hard track to overtake. But I think for me, the 2 drivers that's really in contention at the moment have to be between Andy Carroll and Paul Laramie. For me, Paul, the way he's defending here, he knows he doesn't have the pace in the car, but he's defending this with everything he's got and doing it cleanly and to the book. Very, very, very good driving. Andy Carroll managed to get through him, and he's managed to drive away. We haven't seen that much of him on stream, but I can say his lap times on the board are very, very good and competitive, and actually about 0.3 a lap faster than Paolo Tempera, who's in 10th place. So if he managed to get ahead of Paul Laramie a little bit quicker, it'd have been right in the running there for a reverse grid pull.
Of course, reverse grid is top 10, isn't it? So, that's always sort of an area we have to keep an eye on, just to be sort of making sure that we know exactly where we're going to be standing for race number 2, which obviously happens about 5 minutes after the end of this first race. So please do keep that in mind when you go for your cup of tea or for your toilet break. As we see Jack McIntyre, he is chucking everything in the kitchen sink at Jordan Brennan, isn't he? He has been all race long, but he hasn't yet been able to get past. And maybe just carrying that sort of bit of weight on board, I'm not entirely sure, but to be honest, Brennan I think probably has more weight on board than McIntyre. He does indeed, yeah. So the fact that maybe that's where the pace differential is coming from, but it's not too big that McIntyre is finding a way past just yet.
Yeah, exactly that. But you notice, even though these are battling quite hard, they're still actually managing to drop Dan Zelos a little bit. Dan Zelos is a little bit off the back here. So, really interesting to see. I tell you what. Oh, as we see Konstantin Kletzer with a spin, so I presume... I mean, you can see Paul Laramie is still ahead of Kenny Press. I think that was maybe a case of, I'm using my judgment here, Kenny Press maybe looking for a move on Paul Laramie, and then Konstantin Kletz getting caught out because maybe Kenny Press is having to take some action to try and create new moves. So, yeah, it's quite interesting, but Paul is still hanging on there. I've got to ask Jack, who you favorite driver of the day at the moment? I put the pressure on you.
I was hoping you wouldn't ask that, and I'll tell you what, I'm going to postpone my answer because the checkered flag is about to drop on this lap as Bugner starts to go across the line, which means Callum Newsham, he has about 3/4 of the lap to go before he takes the checkered flag. Ryan Elliott has gone backwards. Ryan Elliott is falling away slightly, but two drivers who are facing the wrong way is that Luke Weston?
Wow.
Indeed, it is Luke Weston and Tempera as well. Weston gets past Tempera. And that means Paul Laramie has launched himself into a potential pole position for race number 2.
Wow. What a change of position that is. Paul Laramie now is going to want to defend for everything he's got. Currently sitting in a reverse pole grid position. Let's see what he can do.
Yeah, exactly. Kenny Press will be all far too aware of this, though, won't he? And hopefully nothing silly becomes of it, because the more these two fight, the more opportunity Luke Weston has to try and get past one of them. But there's a little tap at the backside there by Kenny Press on Paul Laramie. So can Paul keep the pressure? Is there going to be more contact? Luke Weston's looking at the inside. No, but it does just scare Press away slightly, forces him a little too narrow into the entry of the corner. That forces him wide on the exit. But by the looks of it, Callum Newsham is about to come across the line to take the checkered flag here for the AOC Gaming League of Champions for the round, 3, first race here at Magione. Oh, and Dan Zelos is off. Dan Zelos is in the wall. Scott Bugner in 3rd place. Jordan Brennan comes across the line in 4th. Jack McIntyre in 5th. Dan Zelos was in the wall, but the gap was so big between himself and Andy Dorman that it means he's going to come across the line in 6th place. Anyway, Magione is providing some late drama here. Andy Dorman in 7th. Max Edmondson comes across the line in 8th, and I believe he's not even at his own sim, so that's a pretty good, impressive part of Edmondson. Oh, and Laramie, he is going to be in 10th place. That means he's going to be on pole position for race 2, the reverse grid. Pole is going to go the way of Paul Laramie. Kenny Press couldn't get past him. He threw everything at him, but it wasn't quite to be. Luke Weston and Tempera will be fuming at that one, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be. Konstantin Kletz there with maybe a fuel issue or something, which is why he's pulled over. But yeah, Paul Laramie, I mean, he's probably feeling the pressure there before, but I tell you what, to bring home the reverse grid pole, yeah, he's got to be happy with that, surely.
Yeah, I think he must be, and we've seen how well he can, I should say. Come on, Jack, you're a commentator. How well he can defend. So, there's every opportunity. If he keeps his head calm, he could really get some upsets in race number 2. It's a difficult track to overtake round. We proved that already just from race 1. So fingers crossed we can still get some good racing on our hands going forward as Callum Newsham just pulls on. Well, he doesn't come into the pits, does he? But I think we are starting to pull him into the interview waiting room. So Dave, why don't you take away with our podium finishers?
I will indeed, and we'll go straight to our P3 finisher, Scott Bugner. Sorry to drop you on that in the broadcasting. Straight to Scott Bugner there. Probably quite a difficult start there to try and find your way through the traffic. You had 2 drivers in front of you who had more weight on. I take it, was the start of the race the time to pounce when you had the weight advantage and you just felt you could get the drive past?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I was looking in my mirrors quite a bit throughout the race just to see how Dan was getting on with 60 kilos, and I could see he was dropping back, so I knew, go for it. I try not to take too much out my tyres at the beginning, and then I could just push on towards the end of the race.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like a good start from me, but now you've got a bit of experience regarding the track. I'm going to probably ask this question to all 3 drivers. How hard do you think it's going to be in the reverse grid race to really make some progress and keep it clean and maybe not get yourself too tangled up in battles?
Very difficult, I think. Just on that first lap, there's such a Constantina effect. It happens, but yeah, I think it's going to be an exciting reverse grid.
Well, looking forward to seeing how you get on. Congratulations on a podium finish, and it's going to be good for your championship hopes, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Onto our P2 finisher, Ryan Elliott. Yeah, difficult track, isn't it, here? But you really start to find your legs towards the end of that race. I think Callum made a slight little mistake and lost a bit of time, and from there you were right hot on his heels.
Yeah, it's not been my favourite track by far, but I think I just knew at the start that if I got past Jack and he started fighting behind me, it'd be game over from then onwards, because it's so tight. No one's finding sort of 2-3 tenths on each other.
Yeah.
As soon as me and Callum got a gap, it was just game over from there, really. I mean, I started to reel Callum in a little bit, but just had the legs on me ever so slightly in that one.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you've got a karting background yourself, Ryan. You know, is this as close as it gets to sort of big cars on a big go-kart track sort of style?
Yeah, it's sort of low power in terms of sort of race car wise on a smallish track, similar to go-karts. It felt like karting when I got a big hit into one of the corners, but thankfully it didn't seem to affect me. More Jack behind me, but yeah, it was a good race no matter what. Well done, Callum. Drove spot on in that one.
Well, congratulations, Ryan, on the P2 finish. We'll jump to our P1 finisher, Callum Usham. I mean, that's about exactly what you needed from putting it on pole. Brought home the win. Job done. Now it's just the reverse grid race.
Yeah, it was pretty good, that. I mean, Elliott was putting pressure on me midway through the race there, so I always had him in my mirrors, so I couldn't get away. Yeah.
I'll ask you. There was a little moment where you dropped maybe half a tenth, or half a tenth, or maybe 3/4 of a tenth there. Was that little mistake that really helped him close up onto the back of you there, or was it a case of just a slight little bit of rhythm loss and then get yourself back in the zone?
Yeah, I did make a mistake. I was struggling to get in the rhythm at the start, so I was clobbering all the curbs and all that. I was all over the place. So yeah, he caught up to me there, and then he just stayed there like a second behind me the whole race.
So last question before you go. I know you're probably looking at the clock. Last question: how hard do you reckon it's going to be to get through this grid?
Very hard, I think. Very hard.
Well,
I'll do my best.
I look forward to seeing it, and I'll let you get your head down, Cam. Good luck for this one.
Cheers. Thank you.
Well, that was a little chat with Dave and our podium sitters. We've only got about a minute left until we go into race 2, but they all sounded fairly positive there, Dave, and looking forward to hopefully another hard battle. But we're currently looking at a pole sitter. We know exactly how hard he's been to get past. Kenny Press does as well as a few of the other drivers, and to be honest, I think the front guys are going to have a bit of a shock, aren't they, as they try and get past the pole sitter?
Yeah, well, indeed. And you know what? Paul Laramie might really slow this grid down a little bit at the start of the race, and it's going to provide, a real opportunity for some drivers to come up with some creative lines to really make some use. I tell you a corner that this reminds me of. The second corner at Snetterton, Jack. When all the cars get bunched up on the inside going towards the hairpin, and that driver that chances it round the outside can make up some serious ground.
Yeah, exactly. It can be pretty disastrous as well if they end up going onto the grass and going straight on. But hopefully we don't see any of that. But what we will be seeing, Dave, is the red lights anytime soon as well, because by the looks of it, they've come up on our screen as grey now. So as the engine rev up and the lights come on, it's going to be racing for the second time here on a Tuesday night for the AOC Gaming League of Champions. A good start by Paul Laramie. It looks like Andy Dorman was trying to get a look to the inside. Dan Zelos, keep an eye on the orange and black car as he fends towards the first corner. At the moment, they're all looking really rather sensible. Having said that, in the background, I think that's Jack McIntyre trying to get past Dan Zelos, who runs a little bit wide. They're going to go through the left-hander with Zelos on the inside. By the looks of it, there's a little bit of chopping and changing further back as well. Zelos holds off McIntyre and adds Jordan Brennan into the mix as well. Brennan looking on the inside on McIntyre. Zelos breaks hard, but I think McIntyre is still safe, but hello, Jordan Brennan. There's a spinner in front. Everybody gets through nice and cleanly, but that's Max Edmondson who ends up turning himself round. And Dan Zelos up to third place now. McIntyre and Dorman going nicely side by side. Brennan getting past McIntyre again. Don't know where to look for this race start. Absolutely thrilling, but then again, it's reverse grid touring car racing. We always knew it would be.
Yeah, I mean, did you actually see that move that Jordan nearly pulled around the outside there? Exactly what I was on about. It's almost as if he was listening to the stream. Regarding Stetton and Callum Newsham with a huge sideways moment. He might lose it into the back. He's hit Max Edmondson there. Just a little bit of grass caught on the back right wheel. Unfortunately, Max Edmondson, an absolute passenger in that. No way he could have known that was coming. Callum Newsham did his best to try and regain control of the car, but that is just a really unfortunate case. And actually, I believe that's brought the safety car. So the safety car is going to regroup. Paul Laramie still in the lead of the race.
He is indeed. Yeah, it's all been popping off behind him. It's apparently a virtual safety car, so the drivers just have to slow down to a certain miles an hour and put a good average and all that sort of thing in. Max Edmondson has had a bit of a disastrous start, didn't he? We saw him a bit of a spin twice, to be honest. Obviously, the second time was getting taken out by Callum Newsham. I don't think we quite saw what happened to him the first time around, because he came into view as we were focusing on Zelos and McIntyre. Apparently, he's on Rob Butler's sim, though. He's not on his usual simulator, I don't believe. So, Edmondson, he did well to, finish quite strongly in the first one. But what a disaster by Callum Newsham as well. He's now down to 13th place. The virtual safety car will bunch them all up. But how much damage is on both of those cars? Is it suspension? Is it aero? Is it engine? Or is it all superficial? Only time will tell. But if we jump into the pit, I mean, the car's looking pretty clean at the moment, but we're not entirely sure. There could be something hidden under the hood.
Oh, as we see Max Edmondson there, nearly getting his braking point wrong and nearly repaying Callum Newsham there. But Paul Laramie here with his first safety car start. How's he going to read this one? I believe he's gone. He's gone. I think he's jumped Andy Carroll there, so he's gone for it. Andy Carroll's actually just with him now. Dan Zelos has tucked in behind Andy Carroll. Dan Zelos is going to have a run down towards turn one here. Is he going to try and send him the dummy and put it up the inside of Carroll? But Carroll looks like he's got a good defensive line. Jack McIntyre's having a look. Jack McIntyre will be looking at this as a good move up the inside, possibly to tuck in behind Andy Carroll. But I tell you what, I've got to say, how clean was that start of the race for how tight and how chaotic these cars are?
Yeah, well, don't speak too soon, because there's puffs of smoke and cars side by side everywhere onto the grass. Dan Zelos goes. Scott Bugner, by the looks of it, in the midst of it, as well as McIntyre goes up the inside of Ryan Elliott. Ryan Elliott looking to be aggressive back into the hairpin. And I tell you what, I think, we've had another incident. I believe that's Luke Weston and Kenny Press, unfortunately, going further down, and Konstantin Kletster as well. And Kenny Press going off wide there, so let's focus a little bit further forward. That means Callum Newsham has got himself back into the top 10 at the moment, with Tempera just ahead of him, and then Andy Dorman a little bit further ahead as well. But Paul Laramie still in the lead of this race as Ryan Elliott goes on the inside, gives a little bit of a nudge, just get out of my way, or just move yourself to the outside of the circuit there, please, Mr. McIntyre. I'll be eternally grateful if you did. But looks a bit, yeah, Ryan Elliott, he's carving through the field with that lack of ballast on board. Is exactly what we were expecting, isn't it? As Andy Carroll is the driver that's holding all these drivers up. Zelos is looking around the outside. Laramie is trying to check out as much as he possibly can. Zelos going around the outside would be a hell of a move if he puts it off. And I tell you what, he's not far away from it. He's going to be on the left hand. And I think Dan Zelos has carried that momentum. Oh, close. Andy Carroll gives him the room to do it. A fantastic move by Dan Zelos, as Jordan Brennan also takes advantage of Carroll going a little bit wider. And I believe the cork in the bottle has been sprung. Zelos is on the chase for Laramie.
He is indeed. I mean, as we see there, Scott Bugner, I think that was actually a slight tap from behind Scott Bugner there. That pushed him into Andy Carroll. Andy Carroll's going to keep his foot on the grass. This is going to allow Ryan Elliott to get a run up. Is he going to make it 3 wide going into the right-hander here? Or is he just going to help push Scott Bugner and go, let's get our head down, boys. Let's go. Dan Zelos, though, has managed to find the break that he needed. Ryan Elliott with the move up the inside. I tell you what, this is really reminding me of some go-kart races. Paul Laramie here, in the car right where he needs to go defensive against Jordan Brennan here. He's just going to hold momentum. Jordan Brennan's going to go around the outside into the right-hander. Paul Laramie is going to maybe break a little bit, took himself back in, and he's held Ryan Elliott up. Brilliant defensive driving down towards turn one. Look at the bottleneck.
Yeah, I think Dan Zelos only took him one corner to catch up to the back of Paul Laramie, so there's no question Paul maybe is reduced on pace compared to a lot of these drivers, but he is still causing problems, isn't he? Just like we predicted that he would. And I have to say, he's done it fairly cleanly at the moment, as they're all trying everything to get past him. In fact, they're already trying to push the pass. Laramie is going absolutely nowhere, is he, at the moment? As Bugner and Elliott go side by side, they're going to have to think about each other before they get past Laramie at the moment is Andy Carroll. He was the cork in the bottle. He's been thoroughly thrown down the deep end now, hasn't he? As he's gotten past, Jack McIntyre's gotten past now. Andy Dorman's looking threatening as well as Tempera, and then Callum Newsham, and they all just keep piling up across each other. Laramie's still in third place, with Bugner looking to be the one to try and make the move around the outside. There's going to be contact there, though, and it looked like Bugner was just a little bit too keen to try and get towards the apex, and Laramie, I don't think he's doing anything wrong here, but people keep turning into him.
I think that was just a case of Scott read it across the front there and just chopped the nose off a little bit of Paul. But I tell you what, I mean, I talked about driver of the day in race 1. The way Paul's just drove that, you've got to remember, this is a driver who's probably never sat on pole before. With a grid behind that, he knows is lapping what a good second a lap, maybe faster than him. And he's just soaked up that pressure, and he's currently still sitting in P6. Phenomenal drive so far for me.
Well, you'd have to say as well that they were getting their elbows out, weren't they, to try and get past him. They were fed up of being caught behind him. They knew they had probably a lot more pace than Laramie, but sometimes he was keeping it as clean as you'd like, wouldn't he?
Yeah, but he didn't run wide once. Nope. He kept his braking point exactly the same. He was soaking that pressure up. He was a driver definitely not looking in his mirrors. He was just going, I'm going to put the car right up the inside. If someone wants to chance it, then try it around the outside of us.
Yeah, exactly, and why shouldn't he? He's not got a blue flag being waved in his face, so why not be as sort of stubborn as you like, shall you say? Callum Newsham, he's made his way up to the top 10 as he's dispatched Andy Carroll, who, as I said, has unfortunately fallen well down the order. Callum has also caught up to the back of Tempera, so there could be an opportunity for an 8th position potentially for Callum Newsham before too long, but we've already seen how difficult it is to pass people. It's not just about catching; that could be done within the space of a couple of corners. And I think it's important to say, isn't it, Dave? Because this track is so narrow, there is realistically only one fast line. It means that if you are in a battle, you'll instantly be caught. Essentially, won't it? It will only take 1 or 2 corners for a 3-second gap to become half a second.
Yeah, exactly that. As soon as you start battling on this track, even not necessarily side by side, just driving a slightly more defensive line, straight away a second a lap difference. Jordan Brennan out front last lap, a 14.6. If we look down the grid, Paul Laramie previous lap, a 15.0. So actually, Paul Laramie's actually only 4/10 off. But Jordan Brennan and Dan Zelos is doing out front. So actually, very, very impressive indeed.
Yeah, Dan Zelos and Jordan Brennan, obviously 2 drivers with an awful lot of ballast on board, it has to be said. Scott Bugner's got a little bit of ballast on board, but then you're looking at Ryan Elliott to be the lightest car of the top 5, because obviously Jack McIntyre's got a touch as well.
Yeah.
So I would expect Ryan Elliott to be right on the back of the top 3 before too long. I think actually he's already on the back of the top top 3, to be honest. I think Jordan Brennan and Dan Zelos have pulled away, but Bugner has got Elliott well and firmly for company, and he's like a bad house guest. He just doesn't quite know when to leave. Unfortunately, Bugner's hoping he'll bugger off sooner rather than later.
Don't have the puns quite that good, but you know what? Scott Bugner's getting rather good at this sim stuff now. I reckon he's going to not be the easiest guy to get past, and if he does get past, I think he'll show Ryan where his door is, if I'm honest. I think he'll show that, he can hold his line just as well as what Ryan does.
Did you bring that door analogy in there just as we cut to Andy Dorman, or was that completely coincidental as Callum Newsham gets past Tempera?
That's exactly what I did there. But yeah, to be fair, Callum Newsham here doing a very, very good job to cut through traffic. You've got to remember that there was the collision with Max Edmondson. Max Edmondson's also got no weight on board, and Callum Newsham currently is running 4 positions ahead. As we see a change in position for 3rd and 4th, Scott Bugner has been overtaken by Ryan Elliott. Will we see a retaliation straight away here by Scott, or is this going to be a case of Ryan's obviously a little bit faster than us, I'm going to tuck in and make sure I go with him and not let Jack get too close to the back of me.
Yeah, it's a bit difficult one, isn't it, realistically? Because it depends how much pace you have, and I suppose if you're Jack McIntyre, who, again, I'll tell you what, we saw that a lot in race 1, wasn't it? And we thought it was because he was pushing Dan Zelos, I think it was. I don't think it was Zelos, actually. I think it was Brennan. McIntyre really piling pressure on. And he was running wide on that last corner, but looks like he's doing it now. Anyways, Laramie's going wide as Callum Newsham goes through. So does Tempera, Andy Carroll, as Laramie is now dropped. Oh, it's a huge send. Oh, it's signed, sealed, not quite delivered. Lost at the postage, I think, unfortunately for Paul Laramie, but luckily no contact. The package wasn't damaged, so he can go and crack on again.
It just shows he can attack as well as defend that, though, Jack. You know, I think he saw a little bit of red mist there, whether he was a little bit pushed on there, it looked like in turn 1, and he thought, you know what, I'm still alongside here, I want this corner, but unfortunately a little bit long on the brakes. You know what? Still sat healthy in 10th place at the moment. We'll see how he finishes off. Andy Carroll doing a good recovery drive here. I think he got a little bit of beaten up at the start and got pushed down the grid quite quickly. But he's holding his own, and we did see this battle develop towards the end of race 1. You know, Andy Carroll wasn't quite close enough to Paolo Tempera there at the end. But let's see what he's got. Let's see whether he's got enough to give him something to think about.
Yeah, remember, we've only got 8 minutes left of this race and 8 minutes left of racing for the entire evening. Please do get into the comments and let us know who you think should be driver of the round. We've all got our opinions in the commentary box and behind the scenes, but we want to know what your opinions are as well. Can you sway us? Can you change our minds? That is the big question. And speaking of swaying things, Jordan Brennan's looking to sway this race result, isn't he? Because he's right up the backside of Dan Zelos, and I think he's probably about as close as he's ever been. Looking at the track map, I know he's right in front of us as well, but I've been keeping an eye on the track map, and this is as basically close as you could possibly ask them to be. Ryan Elliott's put in a purple sector 2, so all of a sudden, with clean air, Ryan Elliott is away with the fairies. And remember what we said, Dave, if you're fighting, a 2-second, 3-second gap can be eaten away within half a lap quite easily around Magione. So expect Elliott to be right on the back of these two, especially if Brennan looks to try and make a move. Huge late braking manoeuvre there by Brennan. He tried to carry too much speed through the apex there, and I think I've run him a little bit wide, but look at this, he's opening up the right-hander to try and keep left, and then open up the final corner to try and get a run, but he goes too wide. Zelos gets a tidier exit, and that allows him just to get that extra 2 miles an hour down the straight initially, and the straight is not long enough to try and initiate that slipstream. Huge late braking manoeuvre though by Jordan Brennan, and again, Zelos looks like he's braking a little bit earlier, but he's braking with slightly less brake pressure, and maybe that's creating a smoother ride for Dan, maybe getting on the power a little bit earlier compared to Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, one thing for sure is I think that's definitely an MOT failure. His brake lights don't really seem to be working other than that top bar. So, yeah, something to pick up on there. I know the car's obviously not road legal, but yeah, Jordan Brennan here looking very, very racy. But you're right, he has to be careful here. If he starts to battle too much with Dan, you know, these are both in very, very good positions for good points. I'm just looking at the championship lead table here. It's currently sat with, I believe, Jordan Brennan at the top of the table going forward. So, you know, Jordan doesn't necessarily need that first place. I'm sure he will want it, but yeah, Jordan Brennan leading to Dan Zelos. Callum Newsham there getting a very wide after the right hand, after the straight. Andy Dorman with a look at the inside. Andy Dorman with the side collision, but what a hold by Callum Newsham. Callum Newsham's finding his way up into 6th place. This is exactly what he needs to keep them championship hopes alive. He's got himself back into the picture. He's currently sat on 38 points with Jack Mack on 43 ahead. So he's definitely not out the championship yet. Callum Newsham's really revived that with his round race 1 win. But yeah, Jordan Brennan on 47 points. Dan Zelos on 45 and Scott Bugner on 45. Jack Mack on 43 at the moment after that first race. So I tell you what, a championship that is extremely close together at the moment.
Yeah, and Paul Laramie, this will be lost on you, this little analogy, but Paul Laramie channeling his inner Italian football here because he's defending like nothing else, and he's back defending yet again. Max Edmondson now can't get past after obviously 2 early incidents on lap 1. Edmondson is looking for that sort of a recovery drive, but Laramie at the moment is absolutely holding fort yet again. And remember what we say about driver of the day, Dave. Remember everybody else out there as well. It's not necessarily about the quickest driver. It's not necessarily about the driver who scores the most points. Sometimes it is. You know, we've been guilty of giving it to people like Dan Zelos in the last round in Donington, who scored the most amount of points and got driver of the day. But you have to realise there was extenuating, well, different circumstances basically. Yeah, exactly. And here we go, Paul Laramie defending, and he's just got that, he's just sort of captured something that's given us some enthusiasm and something to watch and something to cheer for this evening as well. And that's what racing's all about, isn't it? And I think Paul Laramie is a pretty good representation of driver of the day, in my opinion, at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's not always a case of fan favourite. It's the person who's fastest out there. He's driving very, very well within himself. You know, he's consistent each lap. He's putting a hell of a defensive drive. I'll be very impressed if he can hold his own here up the inside of Max Edmondson. And he has indeed, look, he's retaliated exactly what I thought he would do. You know what? This is a great drive by Paul and really putting his stamp on the championship going, guys, don't necessarily, look at that. Break there, knew there wasn't the room. Break just to tuck up the inside of Max Edmondson, hold his own, then he could defend from Konstantin Kletz there in 12th place. This is driving that actually, you know, for all his lap time isn't there, it is phenomenal driving at the moment.
Yeah, he's. I've been told off using a football analogy by Rich, who runs VRRC. He said you need to get in the rugby analogy. So I can say that one person who's trying really hard is Jack McIntyre on Scott Bugner, isn't he? He's almost alongside him, but he's not going to quite get to the byline just yet, is he? Bugner is keeping it just ahead of him, but I think they could be knocking on the door.
Yeah, they could indeed. I mean, I'm not a rugby fan myself, Jack, so I can't really join you in the rugby analogies. But yeah, you know what? This is a battle that I think is still 3 minutes left, and Scott Bugner is looking quite prone here to being caught by Jack Mack here. Jack Mack's going to have to be quite creative with his line choice. I tell you what, Callum Newsham isn't that far back, and if these really start a battle, Callum Newsham with no weight on board could be a real threat to these two.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, Newsham putting in some good lap times as well. Andy Dorman's actually the only driver out there at the moment who's just done a green sector 1. But Callum Newsham, looking at his sectors compared to, he's 0.3 of a second just in sector 1 compared to Jack McIntyre, which is pretty phenomenal, isn't it? Ryan Elliott's close, so he's now within 0.8 of a second away from Jordan Brennan. So again, it's going to be a 3-way fight for the lead. Trust you me, as we see McIntyre looking up the inside, but again, Bugner, knowing he was coming, keeping that left mirror firmly in his sights as he was coming towards the apex. McIntyre has done that before to try and put cars off the scent. It's not been quite happening. Newsham will be there. There's only 2 minutes left as McIntyre looks on the inside. Bugner's going defensive, and that was a huge move left and right. Right and left, I should say, by McIntyre. Newsham will be looking at this and absolutely loving it, won't he? I think this is going to be our penultimate lap. We should have one more. Zelos still in the race lead, but only by a couple of tenths ahead of Brennan, Elliott, then Bugner, who's currently the white car that's in the lead of that little battle, and then McIntyre, Newsham, the top 6. They're really getting their hands stuck in here as Brennan, now all of a sudden he's spent the entire race trying to catch and overtake Dan Zelos now, but he's got the pressure behind them from Ryan Elliott, and hopefully there's no tap tackle come the end of this race like maybe we saw at the end of race 2 at Donington.
I mean, I've got to say as well, this is a phenomenal battle, but I'm looking at Callum Newsham's lap times. Previous lap Jack McIntyre at 14.9, previous lap Callum Newsham at 14.3. So we are looking at actually a potential that this could be a one-lap shootout at the end between Callum Newsham, Jack Mack and Scott Bugner, as well as a separate battle between Dan, Jordan and Ryan. Wow, you couldn't write this stuff.
That's fantastic, isn't it? Every round we come to, it doesn't matter what track we throw at them, what car we throw at them, they seem to provide us with some kind of thrilling finale, don't we? And I tell you what, the reverse grid has been dealt with a lot better, I'd say, in this race than maybe we've seen it before as well, with the lead drivers not necessarily making the mistakes that we've seen previously. So well done to all involved, I'd say, apart from Max Edmondson will probably disagree with me there, due to the fact that obviously he was turned around twice, but apart from that, we've seen pretty clean racing in this reverse grid. As Jordan Brennan right in the middle of this little sandwich, it looks like Dan Zelos has maybe got an extra car length or two ahead of Jordan on this final lap. Bugner, McIntyre and Newsham as they are, but Newsham is now caught within a second of Jack McIntyre as well as we're going towards the final few complexes of corners. Now Zelos still ahead of Brennan and Elliott nicely close tail to tail basically as we're going into the final couple of chicanes. I think Zelos is going to be safe, Dave, but what has Jordan Brennan got up his sleeve there to keep off Ryan Elliott, who's obviously there is a tap tackle from behind, but it's not going to hurt him too much. Jordan Brennan's going to take second place, but Dan Zelos is going to take the victory here to potentially retake the championship lead ahead of Jordan Brennan and Ryan Elliott. Ryan putting himself firmly back into championship contention, and Bugner, McIntyre and Newsham is as it's finished. Andy Dorman and Pablo Tampera, Andy Carroll in 9th place. Max Edmondson ended up getting through, as we saw, on Paul Laramie to take the top 10 positions. Laramie and Kletzer as it finishes. with Weston and Press running out the order.
Yeah, for sure. Tell you what, I'm pleased you were commentating for that, because I couldn't contain myself there. That was one hell of a last lap there. Dan Zelos yet again proving to just do enough, but I say do enough. It's almost like he gets that little bit of luck where another driver just closes into the car behind him, and then them start battling. He just gets that little sigh of relief, doesn't he? He gets that break, but great drive by him still, faultless. He had pressure from Jordan the entire way through that race too. He's held on, even though he's got the most weight on board out of everyone. Jordan Brennan with a stellar drive there as well. Great early start, just enough attack to get through the pack. And I tell you what, Paul Laramie for me, the standout driver from the round. I think we've found out who can defend.
Yeah, exactly, and he has been awarded driver of the day as well for just his defensive drive and having that little X factor and just that sort of something extra. And he's just driven very, very well, stubborn but fair. So well done to him. But you're right. I think you've got a few podium finishers to have a chat to, Dave, yet again. So please do take it away.
Yeah, we'll do, and I'll go straight to our P3 finisher, Ryan Elliott. God, you were looking attacking there at the end, but just not quite enough to get to Jordan before the finish line.
Yeah, I sort of relying on Jordan being a bit more scrappy with Dan, to be honest. But they had a clean, fair race, no contact between them, which was good to see. So I'm sort of disappointed I didn't get there, but at the same time, I'm glad on the circumstances. I was just happy to come through like I did, avoid contact with I think everybody with all my overtakes. So yeah, I mean, on the whole, that was a very, very clean race for the tightest track we're going to go to all season. I was expecting that to be, maybe a little bit messy, but driving standards there were really great. I'm hoping the racing on the grid was as good as it was to watch. Like, honestly, that made for a really good spectacle for racing. Yeah, definitely. Again, though, just well done to Dan. Absolutely smashed it. Same as last week. That's 2 wins for him now. I know you got given the win for the second race at Donny, and same with Jordan. Spot on race between both of them, especially with the weight they had on. Obviously, I managed to catch him, but just didn't quite have enough.
Yeah, well, very, very well done on a double podium this round, Ryan. And we'll go to our P2 finisher, Jordan Brennan. I tell you what, I bet you were trying to fight with Dan their entire race and then didn't expect Ryan catching up that quick.
It was a good race, to be fair. Dan did really well there with the way he's got. I struggled at the start, just sort of keep with him, and I started closing in, and he was just quick at the right places. So
yeah,
I couldn't really do much. But there was a little bit where I was close enough into turn 1, but I wasn't really. But I've got time there, and then Ryan caught up from that.
I've got to ask, is there anything that's going to separate you this season? I mean, you and Dan came into the round nearly neck and neck on points, and you're going away from this round with 1 point between you again. I mean, it's got to be a good bit of rivalry there, knowing how clean you can race together, and it's going to be a great championship battle.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, spot on, Jordan. Congratulations on a P2 and another podium tonight. We'll go to Dan Zelos, our race 2 winner. You're getting a bit of a habit of this, Dan.
Well, it was nice to get it on the road and be the first one to reach checker flag that time. It felt like a proper win, but boy, did I have to work hard for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to ask you, probably one of the harder tracks that you've driven, a very technical track. How much did the weight really hinder you, or could you not really tell with the not really being that big of a straight on board?
You felt it out of the corners, the slower stuff, but in race 1 I really felt it near the end of the race. That this is very hard on tyres, especially on the front left, and I felt with the weight a little bit I was struggling a little bit more at the end of the race than others, so I had a little play of the brake bars throughout the race, and I think that just helped me just keep the gap. But Jordan was quick, he was breathing down my neck all the time, but I've made a little mistake, he was right there again. So yeah, it was a hard race and good race, and really enjoyed it.
Just before we tie up here, Dan, I mean, huge congratulations on tonight, but no relief for you. You'll still have provisionally 60 kilograms on board going into the 3rd round, because you're still the championship leader by 1 point to Jordan. So really looking forward to how this championship's going to develop.
Me too, and yeah, it's going to be hard, definitely, but I'm looking forward to it.
Congratulations, Dan. And we'll jump to our driver of the day before we go. Paul Laramie. I mean, the best word I can describe it is, how stubborn are you?
Yeah, that was hard work. Trying to keep them behind me throughout both races, actual fact. Good fun.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, watching it, it was respectful racing. You were holding your line, but I take it the cars were making themselves fair big in that mirror.
Yes, they were, trying all different kind of angles. I just had to try and hold the line where... I mean, the track helps, because there's only so many places you can get by.
Yeah.
But trying to position a car so they couldn't get up the inside around the places where they could. So it's all about trying to get the next corner prepped, so I knew as soon as they get past in one corner, that's it. The train was going to get through. But yeah, it's good fun. Hard work, but good fun.
Yeah, I take it that was probably one of the races that'll go down as putting a rather big smile on your face, or probably with the biggest wet patch. So, either way.
Yeah, it's good fun. Yeah, it's really good. But well done to the boys. Their pace is phenomenal. But yeah, it's good.
Yeah, spot on there, Paul. Huge congratulations and well done on taking our Pal Max driver of the day.
Thanks, mate. Thanks very much.
And I believe that was Dave Marshall having a chat to not only our podium sitters, but also our driver of the day as well in Paul Laramie. So fantastic by him. And on your screen right now is actually the live championship as of the last two races that you've seen tonight. Dan Zelos retaking the championship. Championship lead. My mind went blank there, Dave. Championship lead with 65 points. Yet again, only 1 point ahead of Jordan Brennan, who was in second place. And then there is a little bit of a gap to Scott Bugner. Jack McIntyre also in third and fourth. Rounding out the top five now is Callum Newsham. Callum's got himself back into this running order, hasn't it? It's a fair way back from the top two, but still, he'll be pleased with the top five. And if he can get into that sort of top three, then that's when the prizes start to get serious, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, anything's to play for. Yeah, you've seen how he managed to pull the race result there after the first two rounds, and he's only 10 points away from third place, so he's definitely not out of this picture yet.
He is absolutely not. No, and I believe we're off to Imola next, Dave. Is that correct?
We are indeed. I've just done the hot lap video for that earlier on today, and I can tell you what, there's something about this car and that track combo for me. It's just the right power. You can use all the power. You get just to the top end of sixth at the end of the straight, and the track's got so much flow. Like I couldn't not do hot laps. I was just enjoying just driving around. So really excited to see how the drivers get on next week at Imola. But I do think the weight will play a big part there.
I can't wait to start the stream 10 minutes early just so we get all the hot laps that you've done for this massive video. I'm kidding. Imola and any car is a fantastic combination, in my opinion. It's just it's a brilliant place, so can't wait for that one. Last couple of thoughts on Magione before we head off.
You chucked that on as surprisingly clean, I'm going to say. You know, one of the tightest tracks that you can probably race in cars that, let's face it, are notorious with a little bit of bump and barge here there with them being a touring car. And yet actually driving standards tonight and the way the grid, sorted its way out in the first few laps, phenomenal driving standards tonight for me.
Yeah, nothing wrong with a bit of bump and grind in touring cars, though. It's always quite entertaining, isn't it? But with any luck, we'll be having fantastic racing at Imola later on with Dan Zelos, who will be taking all the weight on board yet again. Let's see what he can pull out of the bag. All right, my name's been Jack Oliphant. I've been joined alongside with Dave Marshall. We'll see you next time.
Not the inside of coats.
Marshall gets too heavily involved.
And that's white-headed coats.